Please help me welcome to the stage, Marin Golden.
Your daughter is not going to live past her 4th birthday. These were the chilling words I heard the doctor say 2 weeks before my daughter's 1st birthday. She was diagnosed with mitochondrial disease, which can cause multiple organ failures. I was told Kinsley was never going to eat food, walk, or talk. Instantly, I found myself grieving the loss of the very daughter I was holding in my arms, who is very much still alive. It took a while, but after I got past that initial shock, I realized I wasn't actually grieving the loss of my daughter. I was grieving the loss of the future child I had dreamed up for myself the moment the doctor said, "You're having a girl." That daughter I was going to get to take prom dress shopping, sit in the audience as I watched her walk across that big stage to collect her college diploma, fix her veil before I walked her down the aisle, and of course hold her hand as she gave me lots and lots of grandbabies. And now that's not going to happen? In that moment, I got to choose to love her for as many days as I got, instead of grieving every loss and every future moment of an imagined future. What if she could live any kind of life, no matter how it looked? Really, why did I think I got a say in all that stuff anyways? What would I have done if she either hated wearing dresses, never wanted to get married, or turns out she hates kids? When I thought there was no tomorrow, I started focusing on today. The reality of Kinsley not having a future shone a light that led me to deal with being in the moment in our relationship right now. It opened an opportunity for me to see this wasn't even my life to be living. It was hers. And then I saw I was doing this with everybody. I was living for my other children's lives, my parents' life, my husband's life, everybody's. What did that even look like? I could actually give them the gift of living any kind of life that they wanted to live. And what would that look like? Well, when my teenage son came home and had some Fs, we sat down with him and said, if he'd like our support, we were there. And if he chose to fail, he could do that. And he got to live his life and would live with the impact of it. 1 week later, he ended the quarter with nothing below a C. We also get to have an extraordinary relationship where he actually can look to us for leadership and guidance, but he's clear he is accountable for the results in his life. And my husband, who I could tell was absolutely miserable as an employee, got laid off. And rather than rushing him and hurrying him to go get another job so that we could start paying that stack of bills that was adding up pretty quickly, we actually sat down and looked at what did he really want to do? Because after all, right now is the opportunity to do something about it. And now he has an extraordinary business partner, and they started up an architecture firm, and he loves every moment of it. And what a powerful partnership we get to have. And then I thought, what if I let everyone in my life live like this? My friends, my coworkers, and even the person I just meet. And by the way, I realized I wasn't the only one doing this. After the 325 days I spent in the hospital with Kinsley, I got to meet countless parents who were dealing with very similar situations that I were, and they were handling it the exact same way. Like when I met the sobbing mom outside the ICU, whose son had accidentally shot himself in the head. The moment that gun went off, she was faced with having to deal with the loss of that future man her 12-year-old might not ever get to be. Like giving her a hug like he had an hour before the tragedy. or playing football like he had the night before, or becoming a father or a husband, and so many more future moments that he was gripping to hold on to as she was sobbing in my arms. This is when I realized we think our role as parents is to make sure our kids live the life we dreamed for them. And what I'm saying is, what if we let our kids live the life they want with our love and guidance? Our job as parents is not to make sure our kids live the life we want for them. It's to be a leader, one who empowers them to grow up and be leaders themselves. When I discovered that, that is the day my 1-year-old was put in charge of her own health care. And I know that sounds really, really crazy, and you should have seen the looks I got from the medical staff. They would come in every 2 hours to take her blood sugar, and they'd say things like, "Okay, Mom, where should we poke?" And I'd always say to them, "You should ask her. It's her body." And you know what? Sure enough, she would know right where she wanted it. I'd also make sure that I would go through every pros and con of every medical treatment and intervention we could give her, and she got to choose. For example, would she rather risk going under anesthesia, or would she rather risk it hurting for a short time when they would have to change out her feeding tube? And when my daughter Kinsley started sneaking food, despite what all those first round of doctors told us that she was never going to be able to eat, her doctor now, who is very much clear, Kinsley calls the shots in her medical care, said to us, "Well, if she'd like to eat, let's see how far we can get." Out of taking on empowering Kinsley to be in charge of her medical care and responsible for the results, I am proud to say my daughter is not just alive 2 years past what the doctor said she would, she is thriving. I am clear that would not have happened if I had not given her the ability to live her own life. She is now 6 years old, in first grade. She takes karate, ballet, along with so much more. I no longer need to fight for my daughter's survival. We were able to create a team around her that, just like me, wants her to have as many opportunities in life, and so far we are winning that game, and she is knocking the socks off of it. And remember that mom I met in the ICU whose son might not make it? Well, I ran into her. She was in an outpatient rehab facility as her son was learning to walk and talk all over again. And they were celebrating what to you and I would have seemed like the smallest of victories, and she was beaming. Because just like me, she had actually discovered the true secret in life. That the true joy and peace in life was loving the child she had right now rather than the one she wanted him to be. Some people need glasses, some need wheelchairs, some need feeding tubes. And for Kinsley, this is just one of the many parts of her life, and I am clear she can handle anything that comes her way. As much as I always have an opinion, it's not my life to be living, it's hers. So I ask you, whose life are you living? Could it be your child like I was? Or maybe a parent because they're getting a little bit older? Or your spouse because you know they're not reaching their fullest potential? Or even that coworker that just keeps missing deadlines? Now, I call it living for somebody else because we rob them of the much loved opportunity of living their own life. But others might slip in that nasty word, manipulating. That one's a little bit harder for us to hear. Could we be well-meaning manipulating people's lives? Well, let's look at that. Isn't it human nature to want to help those in need or who we deem less fortunate than us? But who is to say who that is? When I was preparing for this talk, I was speaking to Dr. Larry Farwell. He's a neuroscientist who specializes in transformation of the brain. And he shared with me about a time he was doing research in a rehab facility, where he actually witnessed a gentleman flip his wheelchair over and start calling for help by the nearby therapist. The therapist ignored him. And so Dr. Farwell watched the gentleman pull his wheelchair back upright, pull himself back into it, and go over and retrieve an ice pack. At this point, Dr. Farwell's jaw was almost to the floor, so he walked immediately over to the therapist and asked him, "Why did you ignore that man?" And he said, "If I had helped him, he would not know what he knows right now and have as much confidence as he does right now to know he can handle anything." And it's so true. We want to help those who we think are in need because we get to feel great because we just did something good. And in that moment, you are. But will you always be there? What happens when that gentleman leaves the rehab facility and is home alone? Or your child goes off to college and moves across country. Do you move into the dorm room next to them? Or even better yet, your spouse is in a board meeting alone. Do we find you down the street in the minivan wearing the earbud, telling them what to say? Empower the people around you to be their best selves. And yes, sometimes they might fall. But if they have powerful leaders around them, they will still be learning. So I leave you with this. Do you want to be someone who has to make sure life turns out around you? Or do you want to be a leader, living life as it turns out and has amazing people thriving around you? Thank you so much.